Good morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. Right at the beginning, I'd just like to acknowledge the contributions of all my colleagues and co-authors towards this presentation. I think everyone can understand that COVID-19 pandemic has had an immense impact on all our lives. And in this presentation, I'd like to briefly explore how COVID-19 and the associated lockdown has influenced South African national parks or sandparks, and in particular, how it has influenced the sustainability principles of ecological integrity, financial feasibility, and social relevance. To make sense of the challenges and opportunities brought about by the pandemic, we drew on quantitative and qualitative information sourced from ongoing monitoring, organizational reports, questionnaires, as well as interviews and discussions with Sandpark staff. Now, a key response by many governments to the pandemic has been to decrease human mobility through border closures and stay-at-home regulations. And at one point in early April, approximately half the world's population was under some sort of home confinement. And this led to a new phrase called the anthropause. South Africa experienced some of the most stringent lockdown regulations, beginning with a hard lockdown on the 27th of March. And a phased approach to reopening the economy meant that no tourists or visitors could enter national parks or any protected area for a period of 67 days until the 1st of June, when open access parks were opened for day visitors. And then on the 7th of June, sort of gated or fenced parks were open for day excursions. And then only on the 17th of August could limited overnighting occur within national parks. One of our key messages or highlights is the interconnectedness of people and ecosystems, and that complex direct and indirect pathways operating at various temporal and spatial scales resulted in both positive and negative short-term responses. And to try and highlight this and create a thread through the presentation, I'm going to build a simple framework as we go. The lockdown regulations resulted in a 96% reduction in tourists between the end of March and end of June 2020, which has financial implications. 70% of Sandpark's income is generated through tourism, 23% through government subsidy, and 7% is generated in-house through other means like game sales. However, the loss of a single income source, your main income revenue, through tourism has highlighted the limitations of being reliant on a single primary revenue source. But I'll come back to this in a minute. The other common question in both popular and scientific literature has been around the impact of the anthropause on the environment. No tourists have certainly lessened pressures on the parks. In terms of fuel sales, the decrease in tourism has resulted in an 88 or 86% decrease in the amount of fuel sold within 7 national parks. And this obviously then translates into less CO2 emissions, less noise, and fewer road curls. There's also been dramatic reductions in solid waste produced and water usage within parks at about 98% each. There is some anecdotal observations by park managers and rangers relating to animal or bird sightings in different areas or areas where tourism is usually quite high, but we have no hard data available, and this change in behavior is probably a short-term and likely to have major long-term benefits. Ensuring that society benefits from ecosystem services flowing from national parks is part of Sandpark's public good mandate. And COVID-19 reduced people's ability to access benefits from protected areas directly through various tourism experiences. But in addition to that, we lost approximately 1.4 million of community levy revenue that would normally be used for local community school infrastructure developments. We have not experienced any job losses within Sandparks, but there certainly have been job and income losses in tourism-related ventures associated with our parks, for example, courier markets and local tour operators. In addition, approximately 50,000 environmental education visits for community members and local school learners have been lost. This reduces opportunities to raise conservation awareness, build capacity and constituency for conservation, national parks, and environmental issues in general amongst the relevant participant groups. In addition, direct access to resources have been interrupted. For example, in Kruger, Mopani worm harvesting was unable to take place, and this has impacted income, livelihoods, food security, and social relations. And this despite having a very good Mopani worm year. Initially, all fishing was banned in South Africa during Level 5 lockdown. However, during Level 4, exemption permits were allocated to subsistence or small-scale fishing, and in Level 3, recreational fishing was once again permitted. Initially, this was only allowed within estuaries because there was still a ban on the beaches. During Level 3, we documented a significant spike in fishing effort on both Swartflare and Knysna estuaries, with fishing effort in June being some of the highest recorded within these systems. Observations during this period pointed to a number of factors, including the increase in subsistence fishing, an increase in recreational fishing due to people being unable to go back to work, and a high number of students that were not at university. If you have a look at the equivalent time periods in different years, you can see just how much that spike has been during during June 2020. There's also been a lot of concern in the media and in the scientific literature around the potential increase in illegal harvesting and the ability of protected authorities to continue with their law enforcement. However, if we looked at snare data from across Kruger, we saw no discernible trends of an increase in snaring. And likewise, if we looked at the amount of gill nets, in this case total length of netting material removed from the wilderness lakes, we could show no discerning trend, although there is a weak trend of an increase in netting since April 2016. Law enforcement was classified as an essential service and has continued throughout the lockdown period, and in fact has actually been emphasized in some parks. If we had a look at the number of patrols recorded by coastal parks during April to July, we saw an increase, a 10% year-on-year increase. However, other parks reported difficulties in maintaining law enforcement activities due to budget constraints. And in this instances, collaboration with other alternative law enforcement agencies has been beneficial and led to new relationships and collaborations. Overall, illegal activities, including rhino poaching, decreased during heavy lockdown, but trends indicate an increase since restrictions have been eased. Despite opportunity losses, the pandemic has also facilitated new ways of connecting people in parks, providing important lessons for relationship building and benefit sharing. Some of the initiatives have included the distribution of face masks, which have all been made by local sewing groups, distribution of hand sanitizer, and awareness information through both digital and printed means to over 3,000 traditional healers alongside Kruger National Park. In addition to this, water tanks and over 7,000 food parcels have also been distributed to local communities. And these initiatives have the ability to influence relationships way beyond the initial benefits gained from the actual handing over of resources. Both the pandemic itself, along with uncertainty around tourism revenue, has led to a high level of anxiety within SANParks' staff. Park management has found themselves initially having to create awareness around the pandemic and the new regulations, which then changed to having to deal with increased levels of fear and anxiety, decreased motivation, and increased fatigue amongst the workforce. For many, the home environment was not suited to working from home, and while some parks struggled with poor communication, cell phone receptions, etc., other parks struggled with transport, both due to cost curtailment measures, but also due to limited public transport and disaster management regulations that limited the number of people per vehicle. A large amount of park management time was spent on developing and updating regulations and protocols. Cost curtailment measures also meant a reprioritization and a reassessment of plans, including those for research and monitoring. External research was stopped, and only core essential long-term monitoring could be undertaken by in-house researchers, and this was where feasible, and within budget constraints. For some parks, this was seen as a strong negative, with a loss of information that could feed into management decision-making. However, positive outcomes may include the consolidation of projects, enhanced collaboration and data sharing, as well as a significant effort to analyze, synthesize, and extract value from diverse data sets to address existing or new questions. Social distancing regulations has also impacted SANParks stakeholder engagement abilities. Meetings have been cancelled, including the revision of 2 park management plans or moved to online platforms, but these have been inaccessible to all stakeholders. The key role of stakeholder engagement has been building relationships between SANParks and the public, and some meetings that have had regular occurrences for decades have not been able to take place, eroding these social connections and relationships. For example, the Shlangangani Forum in Kruger has been working for 22 years and meeting quarterly, and in 22 years they have not missed a single meeting until this year. Although the use of technology was seen as a benefit, saving both time and money, sorry, if I may just rephrase that, the use of technology has been seen as a benefit, saving both time and money, whilst the pandemic has also shifted the focus onto empowering and promoting health and well-being of employees. Communication during this time at all levels has been seen as an absolute key in navigating this period. The COVID-19 pandemic and associated lockdown has had multiple and pervasive direct and indirect impacts on SANParks, highlighting the complexity of parks as social ecological systems. Navigating this period has required reflection, reprioritization, adaptation, and creativity, forging new relationships and partnerships, seeking expanded opportunities for collaboration, and developing alternative funding strategies will be key in the short to medium term going forward. Thank you very much.